Mr. Money wants to buy an airport. And honestly, at first, it sounds like the greatest business idea ever. Think about it. Thousands of passengers walking through your building. Planes landing every single day. Restaurants, shops, parking, advertising, cargo. Everywhere you look, someone is paying you. So Mr. Money has one question. Could owning an airport make him insanely rich? There's just one problem. He hasn't looked at the bill yet. To Mr. Money, an airport looks like a giant money machine. Passengers arrive. Airlines arrive. Businesses set up shop. And everyone seems to be spending money. So he grabs a calculator and starts counting. First, the airlines. Airports can charge for things connected to aircraft operations, landing, parking, passenger services, security, and other airport services. So every time an aircraft uses the airport, there can be money attached to that activity. Mr. Money's eyes light up. Airlines are paying. Passengers are paying. This is looking very good. But then he notices something. The planes aren't the only things making him money. Inside the terminal is an entire economy. Restaurants, coffee shops, duty-free stores, retail, car rentals, parking, property, advertising, and businesses paying for space inside the airport. Mr. Money suddenly realizes he isn't just buying a runway. He's buying an entire commercial ecosystem. Now Mr. Money is really excited because this is where the numbers start getting ridiculous. In 2024, airports worldwide generated billions from non-aeronautical activities alone. Globally, that revenue averaged about $7.57 per passenger. And suddenly, Mr. Money sees the opportunity. Millions of passengers, multiplied by money spent inside the airport. This could be huge. Mr. Money grabs his calculator again. More passengers, more businesses, more spending, more revenue. He leans back in his chair and says, I'm going to be rich. Then, the airport hands him the bill. First, employees. Airports need people to operate them. Operations, maintenance, customer service, security, engineering, management, and a whole lot more. An airport doesn't run itself. Then there's maintenance, runways, buildings, baggage systems, lighting, technology, equipment, utilities. Everything has to keep working. And when something breaks, you can't exactly put the airport on pause. And then comes one of the biggest problems. Infrastructure. Airports are constantly dealing with enormous capital requirements. Expanding terminals, improving runways, buying equipment, upgrading technology, building for more passengers. And all of that costs money. Remember that $7.57 per passenger Mr. Money was so excited about? Here's the problem. That's revenue, not profit. ACI's 2024 figures put average global operating expenses at about $10.31 per passenger, with another $5.33 per passenger in capital costs. Suddenly, that airport doesn't look quite so magical. And this is where Mr. Money learns one of the most important lessons in business. Revenue is not profit. A company can bring in enormous amounts of money and still have enormous amounts of money leaving at the same time. But here's where airport economics gets really interesting. Airports don't rely on just one source of income. They diversify. If passengers spend more in restaurants, that's revenue. If parking demand increases, that's revenue. If more retail businesses want space, that's revenue. If passenger traffic grows, suddenly, the entire ecosystem can become more valuable. And that reveals something important. The real engine of an airport isn't actually the runway. It's the passenger. More passengers can mean more flights. More flights can mean more airport activity. More activity means more opportunities to earn from everything happening inside the airport. But Mr. Money has a problem. He can't just decide to double the number of passengers. He can't force airlines to fly there. And he can't build whatever he wants without dealing with regulations, safety requirements, capacity, and enormous amounts of planning. That's what makes airports different from a normal shop. You're not simply opening the doors and hoping customers walk in. You need airlines. You need passengers. You need infrastructure. You need commercial partners. And you need an airport that can actually handle the traffic. So now comes the question Mr. Money actually cares about. Could he afford to own one? And here's where we need to clear something up. Owning an airport doesn't necessarily mean walking into a real estate office and buying the whole thing like a house. Airports can operate under different ownership and management structures, including public ownership, private participation, and public-private partnerships. So instead of Mr. Money trying to buy an entire airport outright, he could potentially look at participating in an airport business through a partnership, concession, investment structure, or another ownership arrangement. Suddenly, the dream becomes a little more realistic. Mr. Money goes back to his calculator. He looks at the passengers, the airlines, the shops, the parking, the property, the operating costs, the infrastructure, the investment required. And finally, he understands. Could Mr. Money afford an airport? Probably not by simply showing up with a giant bag of cash. But could an airport be an enormous business? Absolutely. The economics are just much more complicated than planes land, people pay, I get rich. And that's the lesson. The biggest businesses aren't necessarily the ones with the biggest revenue numbers. What matters is what happens after the revenue comes in. Because revenue gets attention, but profit builds wealth. Mr. Money may not own an airport yet, but now he knows exactly what he'd be looking at if he ever decided to buy one. Because when you're thinking about buying a business, don't just ask how much money it makes. Ask how much money it keeps. I'm Mr. Money, and I'll see you in the next investigation.